Red Dwarf was never meant to be safe television. Behind the jokes and sci-fi chaos, the BBC quietly winced at several moments that went much further than anyone expected. Fact 1.
You've got this major psychological defect which blinds you to the fact that you're boring people to death.
The BBC struggled with the fact that Red Dwarf had no traditional hero at its centre. Dave Lister was lazy, unmotivated, and openly proud of avoiding responsibility. Arnold Rimmer was insecure, cowardly, and emotionally abrasive. Kryten lived in constant anxiety and guilt. Kat existed almost entirely for vanity and comfort. No character offered moral guidance or leadership. Executives feared audiences would feel disconnected from such a cast. This went against decades of BBC sitcom design. Early internal notes questioned whether viewers would care about anyone on screen. Writers ignored those concerns completely. They believed deeply flawed characters felt more honest. The BBC quietly assumed the risk might backfire. Instead, the absence of a hero became the show's greatest strength.
A motorised tie rack and an inflatable shark.
Fact 2.
I got a registered trademark where my wing dang doodle used to be.
Red Dwarf was built on the extinction of the human race. Humanity's total destruction was treated as a background detail. Characters referenced it casually, often for humour. There was little emotional weight attached to the idea. Some BBC staff felt this was disturbingly bleak for a sitcom. The scale of loss was enormous and unprecedented for comedy. Executives worried the tone bordered on nihilism. Few comedies had ever treated apocalypse so lightly. Internal discussions questioned audience comfort levels. Writers believed darkness sharpened the humour. They refused to soften the premise. Over time, audiences embraced the contrast. The BBC later admitted the risk had paid off.
Blackmail and A for anecdote. Subcategory S for so funny you'll laugh till you're sick.
Fact 3.
It's like giving a hamster who's only used to his little wheel the keys to an Aston Martin.
Arnold Rimmer became one of the BBC's biggest concerns. Unlike typical sitcom characters, he rarely learned from mistakes. His insecurity and resentment remained constant. Failures did not lead to growth or redemption. Executives worried viewers were laughing at something unhealthy. There was pressure to evolve his personality. Writers resisted every attempt to soften him. They believed stagnation was essential to his identity. Rimmer's cruelty was intentional and precise. This clashed with BBC expectations of character development. Internal debates continued for years. Eventually, the BBC accepted the creative choice. Rimmer became one of British comedy's most unsettling figures.
Kryten, kindly get to the point before I jam your nose between your cheeks and make it the filling of a buttock sandwich.
Fact 4.
Einstein was wrong. It is possible to break the speed of light.
Red Dwarf routinely bent science beyond recognition. Physics, biology, and time travel were distorted for comedy. Accuracy was never the priority. Some BBC advisors felt uneasy about this approach. The corporation valued educational credibility. Red Dwarf ignored it entirely. Writers saw science fiction as metaphor rather than instruction. Executives worried viewers might misunderstand concepts. Internal concerns were raised repeatedly. The production team showed little interest in compromise. Comedy always won the argument. Over time, resistance softened. The BBC accepted the show's playful disregard for realism.
Oh, sorry, I just sat down on a screwdriver.
Fact 5.
And the next thing you know, her big pipe thing shoots out of her back.
Red Dwarf aired in a time slot meant for broad audiences. Despite this, adult humour slipped through frequently. Sexual references were hidden in fast dialogue. Dark implications were masked by sci-fi language. Several jokes escaped notice during review. Complaints sometimes arrived after broadcast. BBC staff expressed surprise at what aired. The speed of delivery acted as camouflage. Executives worried about reputational risk. Writers relied on subtlety rather than shock. Boundaries were pushed quietly but consistently. In hindsight, many jokes would never be approved today. The BBC admitted they missed more than they realised.
Sure, their hosts look after them until they're strong enough to stand on their own 6 suckers.
Fact 6.
I don't think so. There's nothing here in orange crayon with half the letters backwards.
Red Dwarf often treated religion with open irreverence. Gods, belief systems, and spiritual ideas were used as comedic tools. Faith rarely received solemn or respectful treatment. Some BBC executives worried religious audiences might feel offended. Internal discussions raised concerns about backlash. The show showed little interest in balance or sensitivity. Writers believed satire justified the tone. Religion was framed as just another flawed system. Executives feared complaints would follow. Very few ever did. Timing worked in the show's favour. The BBC quietly felt relieved. Later, executives admitted the risk had been real.
You lazy fat pig!
Fact 7.
Although I got the impression a charitable donation to the medical fund might not go unnoticed.
Authority figures in Red Dwarf were almost always portrayed as incompetent. Officers, commanders, and systems routinely failed. Leadership was mocked rather than respected. This approach made BBC executives uncomfortable. The corporation traditionally treated institutions carefully. Red Dwarf openly undermined that image. Internal notes questioned whether satire had gone too far. Writers defended their cynicism strongly. They believed mockery revealed truth. Executives worried about encouraging distrust. Intervention was considered. Little ever changed. Over time, the BBC accepted the tone. Authority became a recurring punchline.
Turning now, ma'am. Turning right now, ma'am.
Fact 8. Red Dwarf aimed for spectacle on a limited budget. Visual effects were frequently rushed. Some scenes appeared crude or unfinished. BBC executives worried about professional standards. The channel's reputation felt at risk. Critics occasionally mocked the visuals. Internal regret grew over limited funding. Production teams worked under pressure. Compromises were unavoidable. Executives feared audience rejection. Fans responded differently. The roughness became charming. Over time, embarrassment turned into nostalgia. The effects aged better than expected.
It didn't just combine the sum of your parts physically, it amalgamated all your faults.
I've got faults?
Fact 9.
Perhaps you'd like me to perform a cowardectomy.
What, reduce it, a sort of wimpoplasty?
Red Dwarf was not always a smooth production. Creative disagreements created tension on set. Writers and cast clashed over tone and direction. The BBC worried about long-term stability. Executives quietly prepared contingency plans. The situation remained mostly private. Anxiety followed each production cycle. The corporation prefers predictability. Red Dwarf resisted control. Staff feared sudden disruption. Seasons still completed successfully. Relief followed every wrap. The stress reflected creative intensity. The show survived its internal pressures.
5,000 clicks off course. All you had to do was engage autopilot. Your watch, your fault.
Fact 10.
To the mechanoid's black box. That cat we brought on Red Dwarf is not a felis sapien.
Red Dwarf constantly shifted between genres, comedy blended with science fiction and existential drama. Some episodes leaned into horror. Executives struggled to categorize the show. Scheduling became complicated. Marketing teams lacked clear descriptions. The BBC worried viewers would be confused. Internal discussions questioned consistency. Writers rejected rigid genre rules. Unpredictability was embraced creatively. Executives never fully solved the issue. Audiences adapted quickly. Genre confusion became a strength. Red Dwarf defied easy classification.
Echo bounces back, which allows us to make sure that everything is, oh my God.
Fact 11.
He's right, I think we should go. Sir, you haven't seen him. Okay.
Red Dwarf relentlessly dissected male insecurity rather than celebrating confidence or strength. Arnold Rimmer's fragile ego was exposed in almost every episode. His need for validation was never rewarded or softened. Dave Lister's emotional immaturity was treated as a permanent flaw, not a phase to overcome. Kat's extreme narcissism pushed vanity to absurd extremes. Together, the characters presented masculinity as insecure, performative, and unstable. unstable. Some BBC staff worried this portrayal felt cruel rather than comedic. Internal discussions questioned whether audiences would feel attacked. The humour cut uncomfortably close to real behaviour. Writers believed honesty made the satire sharper. They refused to offer easy role models. Over time, the critique aged remarkably well. Masculinity became one of the show's most quietly radical themes.
Not a salad, you gimboid. It's an operation where they laser open your abdomen.
Fact 12.
Meantime, you use the officer's lift, which we can't use on account of the fact that we're not officery.
Beneath its humour, Red Dwarf was built on profound isolation. The characters existed at the literal end of human history. There was no society left to return to. Companionship was limited to deeply flawed individuals. The loneliness was permanent rather than temporary. Few sitcoms had ever embraced such a bleak foundation. BBC executives worried the emotional weight was too heavy for comedy. Internal notes questioned whether viewers would feel depressed rather than entertained. The jokes rarely resolved the sadness beneath them. Existential dread lingered even in light-hearted scenes. Writers believed the darkness added meaning to the humour. Audiences connected more deeply than expected. The BBC later admitted they underestimated viewers' emotional tolerance.
Absolute poppycock. I dream of flying all the time.
Fact 13.
There's only going to be one winner here, and that's Votra's Truly.
As Red Dwarf grew in popularity, the BBC encouraged bigger spectacle. Action sequences became more frequent and ambitious. The scale of stories increased noticeably. This shift slowly pulled the show away from its original intimacy. Some longtime fans reacted with confusion or disappointment. Internally, executives later expressed regret over this direction. The show's identity began to blur. Writers pushed back against increased interference. Creative tension followed behind the scenes. Attempts were made to course correct. Not all of those adjustments worked smoothly. The period remains divisive among fans. The BBC later admitted subtlety had been underestimated.
Where the pain an individual inflicts on another is redirected back on them, with one important difference.
Fact 14.
I get great ideas all the time. I just don't say them out loud. You say everything you think out loud.
The BBC never expected Red Dwarf to inspire such fierce loyalty. Fans became deeply protective of the show's tone and characters. Even small changes sparked strong reactions. Executives were surprised by how personal the series felt to viewers. Decisions that once seemed minor became high risk. Fan feedback began influencing internal discussions. Planning future seasons grew more cautious. Writers felt pressure from both sides. The BBC misjudged how emotionally invested audiences had become. Red Dwarf was no longer just entertainment. It had become a shared identity. That intensity changed how the show was handled. The corporation learned restraint through experience.
It appears to destabilize the molecular structure of solid objects, sir.
His version was clearer.
Fact 15.
That smell. There's been a fire in here.
It's a small one. I'll put it out with me beer.
For goodness sake, Lister, that's terrible.
From the very beginning, the BBC remained unsure about Red Dwarf. It was seen as strange, awkward, and difficult to define. Confidence in the show was always cautious rather than enthusiastic. Other programmes received greater institutional support. Red Dwarf survived largely through persistence. Each season felt uncertain internally. Doubt lingered even as popularity grew. Success arrived gradually rather than explosively. Cult status caught executives off guard. The show outlasted safer, more conventional projects. Legacy eventually replaced hesitation. The BBC later acknowledged misjudging its potential. Red Dwarf thrived despite institutional doubt.